Chapter 5, A Sign of Hope. At the home of Ismail, the aged magician continues to read from various scrolls and excerpts from the Book of the Black Earth. While there are many powerful and eye-opening spells found within, he has discovered none thus far that are applicable to their situation. They have the spell to close the portal, but lack the means to reach that goal line. The Sicarii are simply too powerful to try and seal without finding a means of first weakening their leadership. Ismail begins to think that they were lucky before to have killed 2 of the Sicarii generals. Killing the remaining 2 and their queen has seemed to be the next to impossible task. In a room adjacent to the magician, his apprentice Simeon stands over the corpse of a Sicarii soldier. The youth pokes and prods at the body with a thin dagger, routinely glancing over at a loose page torn from the Book of the Black Earth. If he can replicate the spell written on this page, Simeon believes that he will be able to eliminate the Sicarii without having to resort to any more combat. Because the spell is so dangerous, however, it is also nearly impossible to perform. Being a rare blending of both apothecary, sigil, and command magic, the spell requires the caster to not only be a master of each art, but to also have access to extremely rare ingredients and knowledge. Chapter 94, Verse 1. No matter how hard we have tried, some creation is spoiled from the beginning. We have toiled to teach them law and order, how to fish and to farm. The Kudurstrum refuse to learn. They attack our messengers and continue with their grunts and screams. Civilized tongue seems to be abhorrent to them. Nothing we do seems to work. We have had a better chance at teaching the slugs of Miramar to speak than these hard-headed brutes. Chapter 94, Verse 2. We have discovered the Kudurstrum engaged in cannibalism. There are few acts that can be done that anger us more. There is ample food supply provided to them. There is no excuse for the Kudurstrum to devour the flesh of their own. Not only that, but we have also observed them performing horrific acts upon their dead. Acts so abominable that we slew all of those in our sight out of anger. Chapter 94, Verse 3. The Kudurstrum have grown too problematic to effectively manage. In only 4 generations, they have destroyed the balance between themselves and nature set in place by the Creator. The rivers were diverted from the forests, and wildlife was hunted not for food but for pleasure. They refuse to learn language or any of the arts and skills that we have tirelessly attempted to teach them. They murder their own, desecrate their corpses, and consume their flesh. It is apparent now that the Kudurstrum cannot be saved. Chapter 94, Verse 4. At this time the decree came from the Saram princes that steps must be taken to eliminate the Kudurstrum, lest they spoil all of creation. The Creator forbid the use of the potestas, as he had other plans for the world beyond the span of the Kudurstrum. Chapter 94, Verse 5. All mortal life is their greatest enemy and most potent weakness. Should a species become too problematic, and the slate need wiped clean without the use of the potestas, other means were necessary. The spell targeted at eliminating only the species needing removed was developed by the Sangam and delivered to General Mikhail. Only a general who is also one of the Saram is of high enough ranking to be in charge of this task. I am relieved that it was not I who must carry out such a dark deed. I know that it must be done, but my heart hurts all the same. Just having the knowledge that it will be done is enough to create sorrow. They have done this to themselves. We are blameless. We tried all that we could. Chapter 94, Verse 6. Gather unto you the blood of the scourge, and collect it together unspoiled. Should the material of any other species come into contact with this blood, one of 2 things shall occur. The spell will fail, or the spell will then also target whatever species material has come into contact with the blood. Chapter 94, verse 7. Secondly, gather unto you the crimes of the target. This cleansing cannot be done lightly. All of the crimes must be weighed against your own righteousness. Should you come up lacking, it shall be you that is destroyed, and not what you intend. The spell cannot be performed without the purest of intentions and a pure heart. Chapter 94, verse 8. Hezola, Viriwana, Uperiod, Blight bindweed, Clyper, water hemlock, white snake root, nightshade, and oleander. Mix the leaves of these plants together with the venom of the jellyfish, the saliva of the Apha lizard, the horn of the cone snail, the fangs of the widow, and the tongue of the black asp. Speak out the crimes of the target and pour this mixture into the blood. Set the mixture to fire and set to boil for exactly 4 minutes. Chapter 94, verse 9. Pray diligently over the mixture and ensure once again that your heart is pure and your intentions are only for good. Should you attempt to wipe out an entire sentient species without just cause, the penalty shall be severe. This is not something that even an arche is allowed to perform without authorization. Chapter 94, verse 10. Simon, Ideryev, Alabanin, Samayu, Haidha, Ad-al, Aliam, Es. Poison those who have poisoned this world. At the sounding of these words, the mixture will be ready. Dip the spearhead or tip of your blade in the mixture, and deliver a mortal wound to the living member of your target species. If performed correctly, the mixture will spread throughout their entire line and erase them from this world completely. Do not take this lightly. We did not. I have never done something so difficult as to exterminate an entire species from existence. I pray that we never have to do so again. Simeon hesitates, going any further with the spell, fearing that if his heart has any impurity within it, he can not only die, but can make things worse for all of Kataltatuk and humanity. Taking a deep breath, he steels his resolve to continue. The Zakari are evil and do not belong in this world. If he could do something to remove them and prevent any more of his people from being slaughtered, he must do whatever is possible. The youth gathers the ingredients, but is lacking the saliva of the Apha lizard and the plants called Upuriid and Hezlola. The latter two he's never even heard of before, and wonders if they go by a different name to humanity, or if they are plants indigenous someplace else. Sighing with frustration, Simeon takes a break from his project to see what his master has found. "Are you having any better luck than I, master?" Simeon asks. Ismail slowly shakes his head. "The Chakram Obligo seems to be our surest and easiest weapon that can be forged against the demons, but we do not have the material or the means to produce enough to imprison all of the enemy. I fear that no matter what, we are going to have to continue fighting the demons in combat until their numbers are lessened. Enkidu is doing all he can, but even he will not be able to achieve such a feat. They still outnumber us hundreds to one. Even if all of the citizens of Katalkatuk were to each kill several demons, it would still not be enough." Ismail nods. "Our priority now must be holding out and surviving until aid arrives. We must have faith that the Creator shall not abandon us in our time of need. The elders turned their backs on him, but we have remained faithful. Surely he will send us the aid that we need." Enkidu bursts into the home out of breath. "Has it arrived?" Ismail is confused. "Has what arrived?" "We spotted one of your birds carrying a reply back to the city. In our excitement, we must have beaten it here." Fausto staggers into the room, gasping for breath. The elderly man leans against the nearest wall for stability. "There is no way that my old bones bested the wings of that bird. I fear that some terrible fate has befallen our messenger. It should have already arrived." "Maintain your faith, my friend," Ismail says. "The confusion of war, the smoke, and the fires may have all disoriented my bird. Give it a little more time. My messengers are loyal and always return. Ismail hears his bird land on the windowsill and sees a small spell orb hanging from its neck. He treats the bird to a rodent as a reward for a job well done and then plucks the orb from its neck. Ismail smashes the orb on the ground, and the ghostly image of a bearded man leaning on a thick cane appears. I am Refugio of Levant. I have received your message and feel for the plight of your people. I am leaving now with an envoy of our city's elite royal guard. We shall be to you in 2 days from the sending back of this bird, the man says before his image vanishes. Hope, Fausto whispers. We must now ensure that there are still people left alive for them to save, Enkidu adds. Our job is not yet completed. They could not have gotten far, Damask says. The demons have eyes all over this area. If they were still nearby, they would have been spotted. Elahas, the city's tailor, says. Damask grinds his teeth in anger, loathing to be called out in public for being wrong. He decides that he will have to kill Elahas the first chance he gets. 4 men to Enkidu's home, 4 more to the temple. The rest of us shall head for the rear gate. If Enkidu is still trying to evacuate the city, he may be there. If he is trying to save the other villagers, why are we still intending to kill him? Elahas asks, conflicted. Should we not be trying to help him defeat the demons? The demons are too strong to stand against. Their leader has promised us our lives if we accomplish this task for her. Ignore whatever moral obligations you have, and instead focus on the bigger picture. We have the power to save this city, not Enkidu. But is handing him over to the demons really the right thing to do? Enkidu has done nothing but spill his blood for this city. It was Enkidu's hypocrisy and lust that damned us all to this hell. Had we not Enkidu to deal with, the demons would never have been summoned by his distraught relative in the first place. Elahas moves to leave. I can no longer be a part of this. Enkidu must be warned of this evil plot against him. Damask thrusts a hand out, piercing Elahas' chest with a previously concealed knife. The man stares into the eyes of his killer with surprise and betrayal before going slack. I shall do whatever it takes to save this city, Damask says, blood dripping from his knife, and his eyes aflame with madness. None of the other villagers dare challenge him for fear of suffering a similar fate. Splitting up, the villagers begin the deadly hunt for Enkidu and Fausto, to appease Inyana and gain enough favor with the Skari Queen to have their lives spared. Like a series of glass window panes falling at once, the barrier shatters, giving the Sakari hordes free reign of the city once more. Trapped for over a full day, the invaders are filled with hunger and fury. The humans nearest to them, when the barrier falls, are quickly ripped apart and devoured in gruesome fashion, regardless of their loyalty. Please, Damask begs in terror, spare us your torment! Inyana nods, halting any further aggression from her subordinates. Any of your villagers who did not pay tribute to my glory with this effigy shall find no mercy from me. Such is only fair, your most exalted, Damask replies, groveling. Tear this city apart, Inyana screams. Leave no building intact. I want the streets to be thick in the blood of our enemy. They have made a mockery of us that I shall not tolerate. Keep your wits about you, sister, Ymura cautions. Making orders in anger is unwise. We should think this plan out carefully before making any rash decisions. Once again, you attempt to mask your cowardice with strategy, Hui interrupts. Unlike you, we are not afraid of the humans. Hui is correct, Inyana says. Now is not the time for caution. The humans have insulted us and sought to stall for more time. Well, their time has expired, and ours has come. Sakari runs up, out of breath. My queen, the majority of the humans seem to be making their way towards the rear gate of the city. Inyana grins. Stupid animals. Our archers are positioned to make short work of any who attempt to flee. The soldier becomes very nervous, afraid to continue speaking. About that, the soldiers set up at the rear gate have all been killed. All of them? Inyana shouts in a mixture of surprise and anger. The rear exit is completely undefended, my queen, the soldier reluctantly responds. Cursing, Inyana takes charge once more. I want that exit cut off. Lead a battalion back through the main gates and circle the city from the outside. The humans cannot be allowed to escape. Our ultimate victory relies too heavily on the element of surprise. If their neighboring cities learn of our attack, they may be able to band together and form a greater defensive front. I fear that has already occurred, sister, Imura says. The birds that we have seen carried with them messages to the neighboring communities. One of my soldiers was able to shoot one of the birds down before the barrier was erected. And you are just now telling me this? Inyana growls, glaring at her younger sibling. You would have dismissed my words before as paranoid fear of the humans. I sought to discern the meaning of the messages being carried first before acting. How many messages do you estimate was sent out? Imura pauses a moment in thought. By my observations, no more than 10. If even half of those 10 reach their destinations, and half that number agrees to help, we are still faced with roughly 2 additional military forces to contend with. We must hasten our destruction of the city, and move on to a fresh battlefield of our choosing. Burning the city down behind us should slow our pursuers and rob them of any valuable resources, Hui says. By the time they can reach us in the next village, we have already set up an adequate ambush situation. Inyana nods. Instruct all of the soldiers to begin setting fires immediately. Gather any supplies that we might need to make it to the next settlement, and destroy anything else. Do not take any more prisoners. Yes, my queen, Hui says with a bow. What of these humans? Imura asks, looking at Damask and the others with disgust. Spare them for now. We may have need of their diplomacy in setting up our ambush of whoever comes to the aid of this dying city. For the time being, have them locate for us the bastards that erected this restrictive barrier. I want to make those magicians pay dearly for their actions against us. Enkidu and Fausto duck into the first vacant home they run past. A large crowd of desperate villagers hot on their heels. There are dark stains on the floor and Fausto shudders, considering whether the grime is left over from human or Sakari. Damn them! Enkidu curses, punching a fist through the mud brick wall. Our own people are hunting us like animals, while we risk our lives to save this city. Fausto sighs, understanding Enkidu's frustration. The people are in despair, and do not see the light of hope before them. Inyana has offered them a way to survive, and no matter how reprehensible a course, some will do anything to survive. It will be nearly impossible to get near her or her generals now without endangering human lives. We must be prepared to accept that there will be more casualties. We did not choose their path for them, and each man must face his own destiny. Enkidu paces, having too many problems to solve and not nearly enough potential solutions. 2 of the Sakari generals have been slain, but the bulk of their military force remains intact, while most of Kataltakuk has either fallen in battle, fled into the wilderness, or been captured as slaves. Can we not organize the rest of our survivors out the rear gates as you did with the messengers? Ismail asks. Enkidu shakes his head. The rear gate has been taken. We do not have enough men remaining to hold the exit. The demons outnumber us far too greatly. Our focus must be correcting that imbalance. A large-scale strike against the invaders would give us a much better chance at escaping this city with our lives, Fausto says. Any actions we take against the demons puts our captured brethren in danger, Enkidu argues. Too many citizens are now held as slaves for us to abandon. And picking off the officer-level threats has gotten us nowhere, Ismail sighs. No, we must do something more effective. One-on-one, you held your own against the remaining officers. It was not until they attacked you as a group that you were overwhelmed, Fausto says. I still believe that cutting the head off of the snake is the best course of action. They are not stupid. The officers will not likely go off on their own again now. We must do something to thin their overall numbers, not merely disorganize them, Ismail argues. The layout of the city has been our advantage. The demons have remained mostly funneled centrally. It will not be until they reach our orchards that they will be able to spread out and make full use of their greater numbers. If we are to do anything to thin them, it must be done soon, Fausto concedes. What do you have to suggest? Enkidu says. I am all out of ideas. You cleared the rear gates out once before. If it can be done again, what is to stop us from circling the city ourselves from the outside of the walls to attack the enemy flank? Ismail asks. We do not have the manpower. Cataltakuk is in short supply of men and women with the ability to fight, or those that have the will. Our best riders rode out for aid, and our bravest men were killed when the city guard were taken. To secure our exit again and circle the city to attack from behind without drawing attention would require great skill, Enkidu says. If the Sicarii could be distracted, skill and manpower would become less of a factor, Fausto says. I believe that I could create an illusion of a greater military presence than we actually have. That might work, Ismail whispers, stroking his beard. While they are faced with hundreds of phantom soldiers, a group of 10 or so could circle the city to free our captives and remove our one caution against more direct attacks. Meanwhile, you and I would be standing by once the illusion fails to hit them hard with everything we have. If successful, we could cripple their strength and save our captured brothers and sisters all at once, Fausto adds. It is as good a plan as we can come up with. I will gather whatever men I can to retake the city gates. What signal shall there be when you are ready to initiate this illusion? Enkidu asks. I will light up the sky as if it were daytime for a brief instant. This shall serve as both your signal and a way to disorient the enemy to make them more vulnerable to the illusion, Fausto replies. 2 men barge into the home, and Enkidu recognizes them as occasional visitors to the temple for burnt offerings. Hold on, brothers, Fausto pleads, holding out his hands non-threateningly. Think before you act. There is still time for us to mend this situation. They're in here! One of the men begins to shout before Enkidu's blade is driven through his open mouth. The other man is gripped by terror, and his hand moves towards his own weapon. This is a fatal mistake, as Enkidu slices his sword through the first man's jaw, and quickly cuts down diagonally through the neck of the second, until he is stopped by bone. Enkidu, Fausto whispers. No, Enkidu replies firmly. There is nothing to say. The fate of this city rests upon our shoulders. I will not allow the fear and desperation of some to deter what I know must be done to save our people. May the blessings of the Creator be upon you and your success, he says, leaving to find men, both willing and able to continue fighting. And you, Fausto whispers, still fearful of what awaits their people. The Sakari wait impatiently as their human defectors return without the heads of either escaped enemy. "Have you found them yet?" Hui asks Damask. "No, we are still searching." Damask is terrified of the Sakari and what they might do to him for failing to accomplish the set task. "Hurry before I withdraw our agreement and allow my soldiers to do with you whatever they please," Inyana threatens. The man nods, sending 3 more villagers to join in the search. Admiring her own vanity, Inyana walks up to the statue of her likeness and caresses it gently. "I have never before beheld my own image carved into gold. It is really breathtaking," she whispers. "I think it captures my beauty splendidly." "We have more important matters than your worshippers, sister," Ymir growls. "The longer we delay, the more inevitable it is that the humans have enlisted help from abroad." "Are you still going on about that? No one is coming to help them. They haven't escaped us to get the word out. No one has left this city," Hui growls. A Sakari soldier steps into a home, hoping for an easy kill to alleviate the stress spreading through their ranks. He sees a little girl in the corner of the room and approaches, grinning widely. "Hello, child," he growls, sheathing his sword and extending his claws. Suddenly, his sword pierces through his side. He screams in agony as the blade is driven between the armored plates, and between his ribs and into his lungs. The soldier's lungs fill with blood, and he dies quickly, never laying a hand on the girl. Behind him, the girl's brother stands with his sword outstretched, the sword given to him by Enkidu. "I will protect my sister. I will not fail," he thinks as he wipes the blood off the sword onto the Sakari's back. Upon reaching the rear gates, Enkidu sizes up the total threat. The Sakari defending the exit are scarce, but then so are his human contingent. Armed with long pikes, 6 Sakari guard the inner gate, while another 9 with 2 Upas stand by the outer. "We cannot get past them," a villager whispers in fear. "They will spear us before we can get close enough to attack," he whispers, holding up his much shorter and less sharp trowel. "Where we have the advantage are with the horses. I shall do my best to clear out any of the enemy left standing after you break that line," Enkidu replies confidently. Still nervous, the villagers do as they are instructed. No one doubts Enkidu's courage or his wisdom in combat. Unlike them, he has seen cities go to war and massive battles unfold. Charging onward, the villagers rush the inner gates on horseback. 2 of the horses are speared on Sakari pikes, tossing their riders to the ground. The other villagers push past the enemy line, reaching the blockade at the outer gate. The Sakari stand ready, supported by their imposing Upas. Enkidu pulls up the rear, slashing through 2 Sakari at the inner gate before running straight through the blockade. With Enkidu clearing a path, 8 horsemen break through the Sakari line and begin to circle the city as planned. Enkidu pushes down his guilt at leaving behind the men who were thrown from their horses, but time is crucial and the fate of the entire city is at stake. He prays that they were able to get away during the commotion, but he cannot let himself be troubled by those thoughts any longer. 2 more Sakari try to block Enkidu's path, but he turns his horse quickly and manages to slash the nearest attacker across the chest, knocking him into his companion and sending them both tumbling over several large stones and down a deep embankment. Time passes, and Enkidu sits just outside the view of the city walls with 8 other brave men. The Sakari have numerous patrols stationed along the walls and guarding the wrecked front gates. Armed with horns, the sentries will warn the rest of the army should any reinforcements attempt to enter the city. "We will not be able to bypass those lookouts without them warning of our arrival," a farmer named Ahaz says. "Do not worry. I have that under control. We need only wait for our signal to move," Enkidu replies. Sticking to the shadows, Simeon makes his way through the ground-level patrols before pulling each away one by one with a knife buried in their throats. As a warrior priest in training, Simeon has been instructed in both scholarly and physical studies. To Ismail's reluctance, it has been Enkidu has taken it upon himself to personally train the young man in combat. Scaling a ladder, Simeon manages to push the nearest sentry off the wall with a shoulder tackle before felling 2 more with arrows. As soon as all of the lookouts are dispatched, Simeon shines a small flare in Enkidu's direction. That is done. Now we need only wait for the magicians to do their part, Enkidu says with satisfaction. Approaching the Sicarii army, Fausto and Ismail take deep breaths of courage to calm their nervousness. If things go wrong, everyone could be killed very quickly. The risk is determined to be worth taking in order to rescue the captives and purging the city of the Sicarii threat. I do hope that my service to the Creator has not gone unnoticed, Ismail laughs. And I pray that a lot of mine has, Fausto sighs. It is an inconvenient time for regret, but it cannot be helped. I turned my back on the priesthood, and now all I can do is protect this city and her people. Inyana is the first to spy the 2 men as they step into view. Ah, if it is not our friends the magicians, she mocks. Perhaps they think they can trap us with another barrier. More likely they have seen the futility in resisting us, and have come to surrender, Hui replies. Stay alert, Ymir cautions. Their trickery knows no limits. Welcome them, Inyana says. If they surrender, at least make it more entertaining. Several soldiers approach, swords drawn. Now! Fausto screams, raising a hand to the sky. Numerous villagers appear from the alleys with crude weapons at the ready. Inyana begins to laugh hysterically. This is it? This is their last stand? Do we not even get to see their mighty champion one last time? Has even Enkidu abandoned the city and left you alone? Fausto brings his arm down to point his palm at the Sicarii before bringing his other hand up to brace at the wrist. A blinding pulse of light radiates outwards from the magician's hands, illuminating the entire sky. The Sicarii stumble, temporarily blinded by the bright light. Quickly working together, Ismail and Fausto cast the spell to create a vast illusionary force of armed cavalry. The sounds of phantom steeds riding up bring nervousness to the still blinded Sicarii. They lured us into a trap, Ymir shouts. Inyana begins to blink, regaining only some semblance of vision. Form up, she screams. Archers forward, and take out those horsemen. Fausto curses in frustration. They will unravel our illusion quickly with archers. Target their archers. Do not allow them to loose a single arrow, Ismail screams. The villagers rush forward past the illusion, colliding with the still disabled Sicarii. The archers that are brought forward still have not regained enough of their sight to fire and are marched straight to their dens. Other villagers with bows begin to pick targets and fire into the closely grouped Sicarii formation. The enemy is helpless, only just now beginning to regain their sight. Try to spread out, Hui orders. We are making it too easy for them. Enkidu sees the bright flash that makes the entire area seem as though it were daytime for an instant. That is our signal. Ride now, as hard as you can. Do whatever possible to free the captives and take them back out just as fast. We need to be in and gone before the illusion fails. Leading the horsemen through the gates, Enkidu tramples what few Sicarii remain patrolling the main street. In a matter of a few minutes, they catch up with the rear of the Sicarii procession of bound captives. Enkidu slashes Tivon through the neck of the first soldier they reach, before turning his horse to knock another to the street. The confusion all around leaves the Sicarii in disarray, and they cannot properly organize to form an effective defense. 2 horsemen come to a stop overlooking the besieged Kataltakuk. Smoke rises from many places within the city, and the front gates lie shattered. More riders come up to them, halting to await orders. The riders Ephron and Sepre are at the lead of the second group, clad in fine golden armor from Muria. We received a message from the city's priest that Kataltakuk was in dire need of aid. Have you come at their beck as well? Elamachez of Jericho asks, removing his hood. Ephron nods. My companion and I rode out to gain as many allies as possible to bring the fight to the invaders. I am relieved that others have also responded in this time of need. We must hasten to their aid, Lascaux says, sitting to Elamach's left on a large black horse. If these invaders are this bloodthirsty, they will not be content ravaging Kataltakuk alone. The riders close on the city, trampling several Sicarii that Enkidu's group missed. The invaders are not used to battling enemies on horseback, and even those that manage to draw their swords are still cut down with ease. With forces from the combined strength of Jericho and Muria supporting Kataltakuk, the tide of the battle quickly begins to swing in favor of humanity. A once frightening army of thousands has dwindled to a few hundred, and the Sicarii realize all too late that their invasion is in the dangers of failure. Warn Lady Inyana! A Sicarii soldier screams. Reinforcements have arrived for the humans! The soldier is then beheaded. Lascaux conjures a magical bow in his hands and notches a sparkling arrow of light energy. He releases the arrow, which pierces the Sicarii's forehead and vanishes as the body collapses to the ground. Other Sicarii break in fear, forcing Lascaux to increase the size of his bow and release a torrent of light arrows to drop the fleeing invaders by the dozens. Elamachez blocks the path of the Sicarii soldiers with a stone wall, pinning them up against the riders to be struck down. Two Sicarii wearing red capes over their right shoulders stand their ground, summoning bolts of electricity from the sky. Several of the riders are electrocuted, dropping to the ground, the blackened forms of man and beast alike. They have their own mages, Elamachez shouts. Target them first! More riders are hit by lightning, but another manages to ride over the Sicarii mages and trample them. Still alive, the Sicarii struggle to their feet but are felled by arrows of light. Continue onward and liberate the city, Lascaux orders the riders. The villagers supporting Enkidu cut down all of the Sicarii guarding the slaves and sever the bonds connecting them to the U-Paws ahead. Get them out of the city now, Enkidu shouts, cutting diagonally through a stumbling Sicarii soldier still blinded. The villagers load up the weak and injured onto the horses and quickly lead the rest back through the front gates, supported by the influx of fresh riders from neighboring cities. Enkidu is amazed that the plan is so successful. The captives were all able to be rescued. He now fights with renewed confidence, seeing that victory might be possible after all. Thank the Creator you have arrived, Enkidu shouts, cutting down several more Sicarii soldiers as Lascaux rides past to do the same. We came as soon as possible. We were unable to secure full support from our entire military, but I was able to form a coalition of smaller groups to bring here. Your aid cannot be understated. I will not speak anything but gratitude of your appearance. As the blindness wears off and the Sicarii soldiers begin regaining their senses, Enkidu finds that it is no longer as easy to strike them down. My allies fight at the other side of the enemy, where their strongest lie. I leave to take the fight to them, Enkidu shouts. Lascaux nods. We shall cut a swath of their forces here and meet you in the middle if all goes well. The Sicarii manages to loose an arrow, which passes through the chest of a phantom soldier. We have been tricked! Inyana screams with rage. Kill them all! Releasing the illusion to conserve their stamina, the magicians call for the other villagers to retreat before filling the street with a fiery serpent. Dozens of Sicarii are instantly reduced to ash before the serpent reaches Inyana, who holds the magic at bay by simply holding out her hands. The magicians strain against her, but Inyana's power is greater, and she is able to dispel the fiery beast. You, too, shall suffer above all others, Inyana hisses, unable to contain her rage. You will beg me for the release of death, but you shall not be granted any such thing. Everyone, retreat towards the rear gates, Fausto shouts. "We will hold them here as long as we can." Enkidu rejoins them just as Inyana makes her way to the front of her forces, slashing through any villagers foolish enough not to flee immediately. Dismounting mid-gallop, Enkidu rolls across the ground and rises up with his sword to block Inyana's claws, just before she can tear through a trembling goat herder. "You!" Inyana growls. "You have made a fool of me!" "That you did all on your own," Enkidu replies, pushing her back. "Again and again you have returned to be a thorn in my side. This time you shall not escape my wrath." The two battle furiously in the street, claws colliding violently with angelic diamond and steel. Neither fighter is able to score a solid strike as they both struggle to overtake the other. Summoning wind magic, Inyana feigns a claw slash in order to slam the conjured energy into Enkidu's chest. The air is driven from his lungs, and Enkidu lands several feet back, gasping to regain his breath. Inyana surrounds her arms with rapidly spinning winds that form into deadly spear points. She approaches Enkidu with hatred shining in her red eyes. "Reginestra!" Fausto shouts, hurling a burst of fire energy at the Sakari Queen. Inyana disperses the attack with a swipe of her wind blade, but Enkidu quickly scrambles away to his feet. "You humans are a scourge!" Inyana screams. "I will see you all dead!" "If you have any other ideas, now would be the perfect time," Fausto whispers, looking to Enkidu and Ismail. "Reinforcements have arrived from our brothers in Jericho and Muria. They attack the enemy from the other side. We have the opportunity now to defeat the invaders," Enkidu says. "I am too drained of stamina to engage in a prolonged battle," Fausto admits with shame. "If we were to combine our magic, we might be able to construct a containment barrier to buy ourselves more time." Enkidu shakes his head. "No. We cannot jeopardize our allies when they have risked their lives to aid us. We must continue to fight against the enemy and press the attack from both sides." Another contingent of Sakari soldiers meet them past the gates, marching up with an entire line of 20 mages. Immediately, a furious battle of projectile magic erupts. Bolts of lightning are called down from the sky. Pillars of flame rise up from the earth. Light arrows rain down like hail. Bodies clog the streets, and the battle spreads out as the riders attempt to break up the mages and their concentrated effectiveness. The horsemen of Jericho encircle a large group of Sakari, cutting them off from their fellows. Despite deadly claws and inhuman strength and speed, the invaders are put down by the riders with ease. Atop horses, the riders are at a clear advantage. The Sakari have difficulty adapting to the superior fighting strategy, themselves using only the slow and tank-like Upos as steeds. "Bring down their mounts!" Inyana screams, ducking an Aginestra spell from Ismail and trying to counter with a gust of wind magic. Several Sakari draw in improvised bows made of bone and dried muscle fibers. Letting loose a flurry of arrows, numerous horsemen are felled. Tannen leads a faction of villagers towards the archers, screaming at the top of their lungs for intimidation. The Sakari struggle to release another volley of arrows, only managing to drop 3 of the charging men before they are overwhelmed. As the battle continues, the Sakari soldiers become more and more isolated, cut off from a single main source. In smaller numbers, the invaders are picked off quite easily by the professional soldiers of Jericho and the coalition of fighters organized by Lascaux and Elamanches. "Keep it up," Lascaux shouts, his sword biting into the neck of a Sakari. "We have them upon the very edge of defeat." 2 Sakari mages combine their power to engulf many of the horsemen in mystical flames. With a quick counterspell, Lascaux is able to extinguish the flames, but not before 9 of Jericho's finest warriors are no more. Furious, Lascaux hits the mages with a silencing curse that renders them unable to cast any spells for a brief period of time. Without magic, the Sakari mages are not warriors and easily felled. As Lascaux returns his attention to the battle around him, a Sakari archer targets him from a nearby rooftop. Seeing the attacker before he lets loose an arrow, Tannen hurls his crude spear and impales the Sakari. Lascaux is surprised to see the Sakari's corpse fall to the street below. "The city of Jericho thanks you," Lascaux says, acknowledging Tannen's save. "All of Kataltakuk is already in your debt," Tannen replies with a nod. "Our duty is to see to it that no more casualties befall either of our great cities." To their side, Tannen noticed Damask and several of the other city elders and hiding among the broken walls of a fallen temple. "Pick up a weapon and choose a side to fight for," Tannen shouts. "No cowards will be permitted to survive while brave men and women give their lives." "We are not warriors," Damask shouts. "I am a purser. I deal with numbers, not bloodshed. And I am a baker, yet here I am, serving up the defense of my city instead of fresh loaves of bread. No excuse you can provide covers your actions. Either fight for Kataltakuk and live or die with dignity, or die for sure and disgrace as cowards." Damask picks up a spear, but rather than charge the Sakari soldier, he charges straight for Tannen. Before he can reach the man, the flash of Jericho's steel cuts him down. "It is a sad day when our own kind turn on us," Lascaux says, shaking his head. Tannen nods. "Some men care only for their own lives and cannot put anyone else before." The other elders are sent into a panicked rage and sense that a foreign warrior has killed one of their own. "You will now be joining him," Hoost says, picking up a Sakari sword. "We will not tolerate a foreigner murdering one of our elders." "Do not wield against me unless you know you are going to be fast enough to kill me," Lascaux says, completely focused. Like Enkidu, the priests of Jericho are also skilled warriors. Hoost lunges, but Lascaux severs his hands at the wrists with a single fast sword slash. Hoost drops to his knees, blood squirting from the severed stumps. "You could not protect your city, and she came to us in her time of need. You have failed this village and everyone in it," Lascaux says, lowering his sword to Hoost's neck. Ignoring the man's pleas for mercy, the warrior priest takes the elder's head cleanly. "Do any more of you still wish to side with the demons?" The elders are silent, too afraid of the warriors of Jericho. Returning to the true enemy, Lascaux releases several arrows at the Sakari. The mages dispel the magic with a unified chant. With a scream, one of the riders leaps from his horse and rolls across the ground, evading magical bursts of energy. The warrior twists away from a Sakari sword slash and splits the attacker's gut with his own blade. Another Sakari rushes from the side and the warrior hooks his lead arm, throwing him into the remaining line of mages. The hail of arrows is abruptly stopped, bouncing off an invisible wall. Lascaux focuses his magical energy into a conjured bow, creating more powerful light arrows, but even these are not strong enough to break through the barrier. The Sakari mages step back behind the Upos riders for protection, while maintaining their unified spell. The bulky reptiles provide adequate cover from the arrows, and none of the human riders are able to get in close enough. "We have to take out those spellcasters," Lascaux shouts. "We will not be able to deal any lasting damage to the enemy while they still have the ability to nullify our strongest attacks." "Keep them focused on maintaining their barrier," a warrior named Zakur says. "I shall lead some of our men to attack from the side. If they lower the barrier to defend against us, hit them with everything you have." As planned, Zakur leads a group of horsemen to flank the Sakari forces and begin to cut through them with relative ease. Seeing their vulnerability from a side attack, the Sakari shift some of their forces, opening them up for a frontal assault. Without hesitation, Lascaux launches a barrage of magically conjured arrows. A barrier divided in strength between two directions is not enough to block Lascaux's attack. Light arrows pierce many Sakari soldiers, causing them to weaken the barrier even more as they drop to the ground lifeless. The Upos absorb many of the arrows, but enough make it through to kill numerous Sakari mages. The human magicians immediately seize upon the weakened Sakari mages, conjuring a massive stone golem. with dual casting. The golem smashes its fists atop the Sicarii with great brutality until they are indistinguishable from the gore all around them. "Retreat!" the Sicarii unit leader shouts, seeing that they are all suffering great losses. Zakur's soldiers slash through the retreating enemy, adding to their casualties. "Stay in pursuit. If they have a larger main force, we cannot allow them to regroup." "Well done, Zakur," Laskow says to the warrior. "I am overjoyed that you decided to come along with us after all." "I consider it a great honor to be able to battle a military force that no other humans have ever engaged," Zakur boasts. "I fully intend to partake in wondrous revelry as maidens sing songs of my victories." The men both laugh. Do not become overconfident, however. The letter we received warned of elite officers that are much stronger than their subordinates, Alamachez warns. Zakur grins. "When you find one of these elites, point them out to me. I shall take their head as a trophy." "Why wait?" A deep voice challenges from the shadows. "Test your swordsmanship against me." One of General Yamura's most trusted captains steps forward. Laskow readies an arrow of light, but is stopped by Zakur. "Let us see how good he really is." The Sicarii named Mephoth draws his sword as the two warriors circle each other. Without warning, the two clash. Sparks leap from their blades upon impact, and a wind rushes outwards from them. They battle across the street, neither giving their foe any ground. Zakur manages to deflect Mephoth's sword aside and score a shallow cut across the Sicarii's leg. Mephoth counters, smashing a forearm across Zakur's nose, and swipes his blade across his gut. Blood gushes from Zakur's face, but he manages to sidestep the killing slash and block the backswing. "You are talented, for sure, human," Mephoth compliments. "I was personally trained by General Yamura himself." Zakur lunges with a furious combo of diagonal slashes that forces the Sicarii back. Mephoth kicks the human's shin as he steps in for the next attack. Buckling, Zakur recoils, and Mephoth does not hesitate to pounce upon the opening. Zakur blinks several times, touching his throat as he finds himself unable to speak or breathe. His fingers are drenched with blood and he collapses, with his head rolling off to one side. Laskow screams in anger, firing an arrow of light through Mephoth's heart. The Sicarii stumbles, surprised that his armor has failed to defend his vitals. A second arrow pierces his chest, followed by a third through his left eye. Alamachez rides up to them, showing signs of having been in battle himself. "There is a larger battle farther into the city. I believe the leaders of the enemy forces are personally engaged in this campaign." "Then that is where we too must head. Come," Laskow says with regret and anger. "We must continue through this city and kill the rest of these monsters." As they get deeper within the city, they encounter more and more Sicarii soldiers before seeing the heart of the army up ahead. The magicians halt their forces and hang back, hoping not to be seen. "Disgusting," Laskow says, witnessing the city's elders begging the Sicarii for mercy and worshipping them. "We must find Fausto." The urgency of his message was not exaggerated. "We have not much time before those foul creatures make their way through the remainder of the city," Alamachez says. "There's a battle in progress farther into the city," Laskow says. Alamachez nods, spurring his horse onward. A pale blue-skinned figure with long horns and piercing red eyes runs through the narrow stone streets, blood dripping from his clawed fingertips. "Demon!" someone shouts. Yamura ignores the screams and fear-filled outbursts. He can only think of one thing right now, and that is survival. Yamura ducks into an open house and throws his back against the wall, trying to suppress his energy. "That damned human is still tracking me. He already killed Rivius' scouting party. He killed Gishbar and Udu, and managed to separate me from Huyen and Yana's regiment. I never thought that a human could be such a threat. All of our information about this world was flawed. The likelihood that we happened to appear nearby the one city containing a powerful warrior is slim. No, chance is not a factor. Statistically, there must be at least dozens of humans close to this one's strength all over the world. If we happened upon one such as him almost immediately. A woman shrieks in terror, entering the living room to see the Sakari hiding in it. Yamura turns, quickly rushing the woman and driving his arm through her chest, while covering her nose and mouth with his other hand to silence her screams. Yamura waits until the woman goes limp beneath him, and then drags her to a corner and out of sight from the doorway. Let him come. I shall be ready for him, Yamura thinks, trying to calm his nerves. Enkidu goes house to house, trying to scour for any traces of the escaped Sakari general. Enkidu skids to a stop in the street, catching sight of a young boy shivering in terror in the corner between two small houses. Did you see the demon? Enkidu asks, his hand sliding to a sword's grip. The boy points across the street to another house. Enkidu nods, drawing his blade. Enkidu rushes the house, kicking the door in, and pivots, slicing to his left as he senses the Sakari's energy climb in surprise. Yamura howls, a line of blood exploding from his shoulder and down across his right breast. Enkidu thrusts forwards, Yamura hopping to the side and slashing out with his own claws. Enkidu brings his sword up, deflecting Yamura's slash, and quickly thrusts his free hand forward, striking the Sakari in the chest and sending him sprawling backwards. Enkidu takes a step in, slashing horizontally with his sword and cutting into Yamura's midsection. Yamura shouts out in pain, blood spraying from his wound, as he desperately clutches it and applies pressure. You do not belong in this world, demon. This world cannot be worse than mine. It is better. That is why you must not remain. Your evil taints all which is good, Enkidu says, glancing at the corpse of the woman lying on the floor. Your murder will know no end until you are stopped. You humans kill out of passion, anger, fear, jealousy. Is it truly so evil that I kill to survive? Enkidu lunges, slashing several times quickly. Blood splatters erupt from various points on Yamura's chest, sides, and neck, forcing the Sakari to drop to his hands and knees. You cannot have this world, Enkidu says, raising his sword to cleave Yamura's head. There is no world for me. I merely exist in those of others, Yamura whispers, his blood beginning to sizzle on the floor. A thick steam slams into Enkidu's face as Yamura's blood evaporates into a powerful wall of heat. Yamura rises up, slashing Enkidu across the chest and pushing him back against the street. Enkidu holds his chest and curses in anger, his quarry having fled successfully for now. Outside, citizens in peril draw Enkidu's attention. Help! A woman screams as the Sakari straddles her, jaws snapping at her face. Her hands are bitten many times, and she cries out in terror and panic. The flashing blade of Tiavan cuts through the Sakari's jaw, decapitating him. Head to the rear gates, Enkidu shouts, helping the woman to her feet. Several more Sakari run at him, but he cuts them down easily. Other Sakari set fires to the people's homes, and villagers run about in panic. Seeing that their slave caravan has been broken, the Sakari no longer worry about taking the villagers alive and attack in a frenzy. Enkidu strikes out with desperation, blocking as many Sakari from their prey as possible. Women fight back, shielding their children from the predatory invaders. 2 Sakari fall with light energy arrows in their foreheads. The woman they were pursuing looks up in astonishment at the robed horse rider with magically conjured bow. Behind the magician, a horde of other riders appear to surround the pillaging Sakari. We appear to have found more excitement, Elamanchus says to his companion. Lascow nods before shouting to the other riders. Kill every last one of them! We do not tolerate the terrorizing of women and children! The flames continue to spread home to home, until the magicians chant together to conjure storm clouds and bring forth a downpour of rain. Lascow sizes the man up, judging him to be an experienced warrior. I am pleased to see that you have survived long enough for our forces to meet in the middle as planned. I cannot express how grateful I am to you and all of Jericho. We are in dire need of men who know how to wield a sword with any competency, Enkidu replies. He looks over to see Ephraim and Sepre in their Murian armor. The previously pristine golden armor is now splattered with Sakari gore. You have done well, my friends. All of Katatakuk is in your debt. We do not have time for this, Elamaches interrupts, pointing to a large outbreak of flames ahead of them. Lead us to the rest of their forces. Do not take them lightly, Enkidu warns. The 3 commanding officers that remain among them are unbelievably strong and deadly. Elamaches recalls all the men they have already lost to the Sakari. In his mind, he sees Zakur drop to his knees, before his head separates in a bloody flash. We shall not underestimate nor give quarter to our enemies, Elamaches says with determination. They liberate more villagers who are being chased by Sakari soldiers, and catch sight of Fausto, who is holding off a group of Sakari mages. Hurry! We must get away from the buildings, Enkidu shouts, waving the villagers on. The Sakari continue their rampage through the city, igniting everything flammable with their torches. An elderly couple falls behind the other humans as they flee, and Enkidu runs backwards to aid them. As he reaches them, 3 Sakari soldiers rush him with their swords outstretched. A burst of magical energy slams into the center of Sakari's chest, knocking him off his feet. As the other 2 are stunned, Enkidu dispatches them with 2 well-placed sword slashes. He only briefly glances at Fausto, who lowers his hand and nods before he continues to head towards the rear courtyard and exit of the city. 2 of the magicians that Ismail sent for have arrived, Enkidu says, introducing Lascow and Elamaches. Fausto nods, short with the pleasantries. Come. They are gaining ground on us, and we must move further away from the fires. 3 leaders of the invasion force look on, as dozens of human buildings are now ablaze. They do not realize that their fleeing as a crowd will make them easier to slaughter, Inyana laughs. We should move on. The fires are spreading rather quickly, Yamura says, wiping sweat from his forehead. Having rejoined with the others, he knows that they must eliminate their enemies soon, or consider this siege a total loss. As more time passes, the humans grow more dangerous. Inyana nods and begins to strap her golden effigy onto the back of her upas. You insist on keeping that? Of course. It's beautiful. Yamura places his head in his hands, exasperated with his sister. That bulky monstrosity is hardly practical. We are going to have to engage in combat with that Enkidu and his pet magician sooner or later. Inyana wags her finger at him, refusing to back down. Then I will gently set this beautiful tribute aside, kill the humans, and then continue to bear it with me for all to behold. You are very difficult, sister, Yamura sighs. Hui laughs. You will not win this battle. Our queen is the most stubborn female in all of Averno. Inyana turns towards her Grand General, eyes blazing with anger. I heard that, General. Hui holds his hands up in defense. Apologies, my queen. I meant that as a compliment. Carrying you 2 around is more of a burden than this, she says, pointing to her effigy. Focus your thoughts. We will soon have our battle. All 3 of the powerful Sakari sense Enkidu and the others up ahead, in the city's center courtyard. The villagers reach the open field within the city walls, usually reserved for prayers and recreation, just ahead of the pursuing Sakari horde. The rear exit is visible, but surrounded by many Sakari soldiers who have been moved back to guard the crucial strategic point, just as Enkidu feared. "What do we do?" the villagers cry. "Here in the open, they have nothing left to burn. We will make a stand here and fight," Enkidu says. "All able-bodied men will stand with me. The elderly and mothers of young children will protect the children and go through the rear gates once we clear a path. Follow the road to Rehob, for it is only a few days' journey. Keep faith, and I promise your survival." Enkidu turns to speak with Fausto. "Any word from the magicians of Ur?" "Not yet. Ismail is preparing. We'll have Simeon learn the spell in the event that one of our required numbers does not arrive in time. We've expended all of our local contacts. We must continue to pray that they have heard our pleas and come to our aid." The Sakari head towards the gathering of villagers. Enkidu sees the priest Eskiel trying to convince his wife to take Galen and flee with the others to Rehob. "You must go and continue to protect my nephew," Enkidu says. "I can stay and fight. I'm not too old." "Your guidance is needed, should the rest of us not survive." Inyana fires a burst of energy into a large crowd of men. They are scattered to the ground and many do not move. "Go!" Enkidu screams, pushing Eskiel towards the others. Behind them, the villagers of Kataltakuk are blocked by the burning homes and the strongest remaining members of the Sakari army. In front, only a handful of Sakari soldiers stand between them and the rear gates that lead out into the wilderness east of the city. "Do not let them stop you from your freedom," Tannen shouts to the people. "Escape the city, and we shall find you after we win." Inyana scoffs, listening to the man. "Bring me his tongue, and guard that exit," the queen growls. Several nearby soldiers oblige and run towards Tannen and the villagers to cut them down. Other villagers with crude farming tools rush the soldiers and stop them from ever reaching the elder. The Sakari kill several of the humans, but they are quickly overwhelmed. "Handle this, General," Inyana says, pushing Hui into the battle. "Yes, my queen," Hui replies, drawing his sword. "No one leaves this city," Hui says, instructing the soldiers posted at the rear to attack. The Sakari clash with the villagers and begin to quickly overwhelm them. Even with the Sakari's number so greatly thinned, they are trained soldiers and better equipped than the human villagers. It takes 2 or 3 villagers with crude spears and farming tools to bring down a single Sakari. The support of the horsemen from Jericho and elsewhere drastically shifts the tide of the battle, striking down 2 or 3 Sakari for each human soldier killed. Inyana is aware of the losses piling up on her side, but her own hands are full trying to fend off the horsemen targeting the Sakari leadership. The magicians, Elamachas and Lascaux, lead the assault, aiming to take down the Sakari queen and throw the invaders into chaos. Both men possess great skill and push the queen harder than she has ever before been pushed. Despite their battle prowess, the men are still outclassed by Inyana, and know that if they cannot defeat her soon, they will be likely killed. "Garuda Nostra!" Inyana screams, pushing the men back with conjured wind. Lascaux plants his feet and steps behind Elamachas, pushing him forward as they are both blown backwards by the magic. Violent winds whip across Elamachas' face, but he ignores the pain, instead focusing on his own spellcrafting. "Danton! Pedra!" Elamachas shouts, creating a stone wall between them as a windbreak. Lascaux prepares his own spell, using the wall as protection. As cracks begin to run through the stone, Lascaux releases his attack. "Still het!" Lascaux screams, cutting Inyana's wind magic in half and hitting her with a temporary silencing spell. Unable to find her connection to her own magical energy, or that from the air around her, Inyana is forced to take up the blood-stained blade of a fallen subordinate. "Do you think That I have to rely on magic to slay weak primates like you, Inyana growls. You are nothing more than minor irritations. Inyana lunges, slashing at Elamaches with a gut-level swing. Lascaux bumps his companion out of the way with a shoulder, just barely managing to meet the Sicari's blade with his own. Inyana recoils, swinging at Lascaux's throat, but Elamaches throws his hands out to slam a wall of invisible energy into the Sicari's chest. Flipping in the air to regain her balance, Inyana lands in a crouch, skidding backwards several feet. Chidoriya! Elamaches shouts, conjuring magical lightning to strike down from the sky. Inyana backflips to dodge the lightning, evading each strike with her impressive agility. Trying to catch the already strained Sicari off balance, Lascaux attacks with a combination of earth and water elemental magics. Transforming the solid ground into mud, the human mage causes Inyana to slip and take a direct hit from one of his allies' lightning strikes. Inyana screams in pain, lit up by the magical lightning. "Damn you!" She coughs, smoke rolling off her battered form. "I am going to repay you monkeys with unimaginable suffering." The human mages stand ready, swords drawn. "You will not get that opportunity," Lascaux replies. "This is the end for you, and your invasion." Inyana grins, her teeth stained red with blood. "Not even close." Lunging fast, she rushes them with rapid claw slashes. Having dropped the sword for even greater speed and maneuverability, the men parry the blows, but are pushed back by the relentless assault. "Burn!" she growls, wrapping up Elamache's arm and placing her other hand across his chest. Fearful that the blocking of Inyana's magical ability has worn off, Lascaux moves in quickly with an E, sending the Sicari crashing to the ground. The Sicari recovers almost immediately, throwing a hand up and visualizing the Yazitan symbols for fire elemental energy. "Agi Nestra Ahura!" Inyana screams, consuming both men in a pillar of flame. Appearing out of nowhere, Fausto intercepts and cancels out the deadly spell before the mages can be fully enveloped. Elamaches and Lascaux drop to the ground, gasping for breath. Their skin is bright red, and tiny blisters have already begun to form on their flesh. "This battle is over," Ymir growls, cutting diagonally down through a villager's collar and nearly cleaving him in two. "My sister has finally unleashed her full might, and the strongest of the humans already beginning to fall." "We succeed in spite of your doubts," Hui says, pivoting to cut through the breast of a charging horse, and kneeling to finish the rider with a downward stroke. "You nearly doomed us to failure by your constant fear of the humans. Why has our army been cursed so for you to survive this long, when so many better soldiers have perished?" Hui moves towards Ymir in anger to attack, but another horseman charges past, separating them. Ymir turns, cutting through the arm of a Jericho soldier, and quickly beheading another. It is soon apparent that the three remaining commanders are having any success against the humans as they continue to press their advantage. Enkidu rushes into the fray, hacking down many opponents until he reaches the Grand General. Hui clashes blades with Enkidu several times until two villagers attack him from behind. Hui shouts out in pain and tries to fend off his attackers, leaving himself open for Enkidu, who thrusts forwards with a killing blow. A set of claws blocks Enkidu's sword and saves Hui from certain death. "We end this now, human," Ymir says, straining to hold Enkidu's sword at bay. "Ymir?" Hui whispers in surprise. "Do not misconstrue my assistance. Only I shall ever have the pleasure of claiming your wretched life." Inyana glances to her side, where her brother begins his rematch with Enkidu. How can this human continue to fight evenly with someone as strong as Ymir? She wonders. Momentarily distracted, she is knocked back by a pulse of invisible energy. "Annoying vermin!" Inyana growls. "You are a plague upon this world!" Fausto stands over the other mages, engulfing them in the light of Dukan Helez, healing magic. His stamina low, the elder magician is barely able to remove the blisters from the skin of his new allies, before having to stop and catch his breath. "I fear that I have already reached my limit," Fausto pants, wiping the sweat from his brow. "It is unfortunate that these demons did not attack while I was in my prime." "You saved our lives," Telemachus says. "Allow us to repay you the only way we can, utterly destroying these monsters." Inyana holds her arms out to the sides, concentrating discs of rapidly spinning wind magic into her hands. "All of you will now perish." The three magicians rush Inyana, each attacking furiously with their swords, except Fausto, who surrounds his fists with cushions of magical energy to amplify his strikes, enhancing their speed and reflexes with the spell known as Creonle. The magicians are able to push the Sakari back and force her to use the wind magic defensively. After a few minutes of intense battle, Fausto drops back and kneels, out of breath. "Almighty God, Creator of all, if you are still listening and have not abandoned Kataltakuk, please give me the strength to continue on. The creatures that have invaded our city are ruthless and evil. So many of my people have been slain. If we can stop their leadership here and now, we have a real chance at defeating the enemy force," Fausto prays. As Inyana clashes with Telemachus and Lascaux, Fausto's stamina begins to slowly replenish. The older mage's aura collects energy from the air around him, condensing it together into a mist-like cloud. A faint light blue glow surrounds Fausto, increasing in brightness to mirror his strength as it returns. Pushed back momentarily, Inyana condenses her wind magic into a manifested scythe. With an extended reach, the Sakari is able to create more distance between herself and her attackers. Even without making contact, the wind scythe is able to inflict damage by merely coming near the targets. Both Lascaux and Telemachus protect themselves with small barriers just before contact, and narrowly avoid being sliced in half. "Aginestra!" both men shout in unison, unleashing fireballs at the Sakari Queen. With a single swipe of her scythe, Inyana is able to disperse the flames and force the men backwards several feet. "You waste your efforts. Nothing you do will be enough to best me," Inyana declares. "You are simply annoyances." The magicians attempt to come at Inyana from multiple angles, Lascaux targeting her side with an onslaught of light arrows. While the Sakari defends against the projectiles, Telemachus rushes her back with physical sword attacks. Sensing the movements of the second man, Inyana leaps high into the air, causing Telemachus to become the inadvertent target of Lascaux's arrows. Ceasing his attack abruptly, Lascaux readjusts his aim upward, but it's too late as Inyana is already descending upon him with a vertical slice. Telemachus fires a quick burst of magical energy, hitting Lascaux in the chest and knocking him out of the direct path of Inyana's attack. The dangerous winds encircling the scythe still cause proximity damage, ripping through any remaining clothing on Lascaux's chest and drawing a thin line of blood down his center. "Hayo Zanaru!" Lascaux shouts, creating a ball of light energy and hurling it at his opponent. Inyana puts her hands out to deflect the attack, but Telemachus is already half through the chant of a higher-level binding spell. "Terra Rea Ma Fri Giim Loro Ya Makim Soka Raja." Caught in a bubble of red energy, Inyana's movement becomes completely restricted. She struggles against the spell, causing Telemachus to drop to a knee, as the effort for him to hold her is too great. "Attack her now, while I have her restrained!" Telemachus screams, blood running from his nostrils. Lascaux nods, manifesting his energy bow. The magician fires a barrage of light arrows into Inyana, piercing the Sakari all over. Inyana screams in pain, unable to defend. Telemachus trembles, his strength failing. The tremendous power of Inyana pushes the man's hold so much that his body begins to give out. Hio Zanuru! Ustokos! Lascaux screams, focusing light energy into a single arrow much larger than his entire body. Sparkles of energy crackle all around, and the air is filled with strong winds. Just as Lascaux is about to release the arrow, Illimachus is unable to restrain Inyana any longer, and she breaks free of his spell. Dodging the light energy, Inyana rushes forward and knees Lascaux in the chest, before uppercutting him high into the air. The Sicarii releases a pulse of violet-colored energy, hitting the magician and causing him to scream out in agony as he is consumed by the blast. Inyana pivots, slashing horizontally at Illimachus, who defends with his sword despite his fatigue. The man-made weapon shatters, and he is strewn backwards with blood trailing his tattered body. Inyana stands over Illimachus, who struggles to catch his breath. Your weakness has resulted in your deaths. I'm sorry, Illimachus whispers, thinking his companion's already dead. Save your regrets for after this war. Lascaux rushes forward, smoke still rolling off his injured form, but Inyana again turns and throws out a hand, snatching him by the throat. I warned you that you stood no chance at defeating me, Inyana growls, as the Sicarii is about to end the life of the human magician. Fausto steps up and issues a bold challenge from behind. The man is physically weaker and far more advanced in age than the others, but his knowledge and experience are second to none. He still knows that he stands almost no chance of defeating Inyana, but he cannot stand by idly while she tears through the best the region has to offer up in opposition. Surely your skill is better suited facing me than these amateurs, Fausto says, bravely feigning arrogance to provoke Inyana's pride. You have done nothing but attack me and flee in cowardice since I arrived in this city, Inyana laughs. Do you truly believe you can fare any better than they? The others show great promise, but they have not lived full lives and experienced the true horrors of this world. Only that kind of knowledge can prepare someone for a true battle to the death. Inyana laughs louder. You cannot mean to compare your experiences to mine. I have lived for hundreds of years. Your entire life is but a flicker before me. Fausto's body begins to glow with a bright blue aura. The ground trembles as the magician draws in all of the energy from the air around him. My stamina is not what it once was, so forgive me if I go all out from the onset. Arrogant monkey, Inyana replies with a smirk. I find it highly unlikely you have the strength or ability to defeat me, judging by the way you have avoided any direct confrontation with me or my generals. Visualizing the Yazdan symbols for earth and life, Fausto raises the ground up into a massive stone hand around the Sicarii. As Inyana leaps back in avoidance, the hand extends into an arm, and finally an entire body that explodes from beneath. A second hand smacks Inyana from the other side, hurling her through the side of a building. The golem charges through the rubble, scooping up Inyana, and slamming her into the ground. Screaming in pain, the impact drives a mouthful of saliva from Inyana's mouth, and most of the air from her lungs. The magical beast's fists hammer against the Sicarii, driving her deeper into the earth. The screams of villagers draw Fausto's attention. The Sicarii Grand General named Hui is occupied making easy slaughter of the citizens of Kutaltakuk. Farming tools are no match for Hui's swordmanship, and dozens are cut down in a matter of minutes. A horseman attempts to cut Hui down and save the villagers, but the legs of his horse are severed and he is stabbed in the back as soon as he falls. Go! Fausto screams. Go and help fight the other officers. But Illimachus begins in protest. He knows that Fausto will not be able to defeat Inyana alone. Come, Lascaux says. He surely has a plan. Let us do our part and end this war.